Welcome in to the Pump Fake, everybody. Jarrett Bailey with you as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening as a podcast, be sure to leave a review, all of that fun stuff. Championship weekend in just 2 days. I'll give you my thoughts and keys to victory, both Chiefs and Bills and the Commanders and Eagles. And we got a lot of head coaching news to talk about today as well. So we'll start with Kansas City and Buffalo. I've done a lot of different, radio spots and different podcast spots, TV spots, whatever it may be. And everybody asked me, all right, I picked the game and whatnot. And, my heart says Buffalo. I think everybody's heart at this point says Buffalo, where no one wants the Chiefs to be back in this thing, but no one wants to see another Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl unless you're in Kansas City and Philadelphia. And so my heart says, the Bills, and they have as good a chance as any team to beat Kansas City. They beat them every year in the regular season. It's just a matter of when we get to this time of year, what do they need to do to get over that hump? Because we've been here 3 times now, and the last 2 have been especially disappointing, where you had the 13 seconds game, and then last year where Tyler Bass misses a field goal, and the defense didn't play well at all. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. But they're back in this spot again. And in terms of what they need to do to win, and I wrote about it on the Sporting News. You guys can go read all about it if you want the more in-depth numbers. The big key to this is going to be, can the Bills defense get off the field on third down? Because you look at how poor they have been on third down this year, it's been their weakest link. And I'll get the numbers pulled up here in a minute on the exacts of that. But they finished the year 29th in EPA defensively on third down. They're sandwiched between the Falcons and the Giants. Not exactly a place you want to be. And they were 31st in defensive success rate on third down. The only team that was worse was the Panthers. And an EPA per drop back on third down, they were the worst team in the league. You can beat bad, mediocre teams by doing that. You can have a bend, don't break mentality against the lesser teams of the league, while also leaning on your, superstar quarterback and your really good offense to bail you out of situations. But when it comes to these games, specifically against this team, you can't give them long, extended drives because they will make you pay for it. And so that is going to be the biggest battle that the Bills need to win, is can they get off the field on third downs? And look, if it's, 3rd and 1 and things of that nature, where it's, all right, they're more than likely going to pick up this first down. You live with that. You're not going to win every down. You're not going to win in every situation. But the 3rd and 8s, a 3rd and 10, you cannot let Mahomes find Kelsey for a 12-yard gain in that situation and let that be what kills you. Because to contrast, the Chiefs were the 5th best offense in terms of third down in terms of EPA on third downs, and they were 2nd in success rate on third downs. So when it comes to, playing against the sticks on crucial downs, the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the NFL on offense at converting them, and the Bills are one of the worst teams at preventing conversions. That is what this is going to come down to. More than, if Josh Allen's great. Josh Allen's always great in these games. In the past 2 games against the Chiefs, he's got 8 total touchdowns and no picks. He has played as close to flawless as you can possibly play at the position in these games, in those moments. And frankly, it hasn't mattered because everyone else around him hasn't been good enough. And there's not going to be any excuses this time around. Like last year, they can point and say, well, look, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano didn't play. It came down a lot to Dorian Williams and A.J. Klein and Balin Spector to be, the guys in the middle of the defense. And that's understandable. This time around, they are as close to completely healthy as you can be. Taylor Rapp isn't going to play. He's got the hip injury. But even so, if your biggest missing piece is, a middle of the pack safety in the NFL, no disrespect to Taylor Rapp, like he's made big plays, but at the same time, man, that can't be what you point out and say, well, we didn't win because we didn't have Taylor Rapp. That's not going to be an excuse. And no one's going to care, by the way. Because you're going to have Milano. You're going to have Bernard. Taron Johnson is going to play from the looks of it. You're going to have all of your defensive stars. You've got to be able to get off the field. Because if the Chiefs are having long, consistent drives, they'll play the time management game where they just hold the ball and score and don't give you enough time to really do much of anything. They'll play the time of possession game. They'll happily win this game 20-17. That's how they've won games all year. The only team that has scored 30 on them this year is the Bills. And no other team has scored more than 25. So for the Bills, you got to be able to get off the field on third down. Again, you know that Josh Allen's going to show up. He always shows up for these games. He's tremendous in the playoffs, and he's very good against the Chiefs. His numbers against the Chiefs in the playoffs are better than his numbers against the Chiefs in the regular season. And those are games in the regular season that they usually win when he doesn't play as well. Not to say that he plays poorly. It's just he takes his game to another level in these games, and it hasn't mattered because everyone around him hasn't held up their end of the couch. So you got to have stops. You got to have timely stops. If it's 3rd and 12, get off the field. If it's 3rd and 8, get a stop. Because the Bills, if they protect the ball, don't turn the ball over, consistently put up points, they're going to have a shot like they always do. But in each of the last 2 games, especially in the playoffs against Kansas City, it's been the defense that has really let them down. Outside of a Mecole Hardman fumble at the goal line last year, the Bills wouldn't have had a stop on them. The Chiefs took the ball into halftime, and then they took the ball to end the game. Those were the only times outside of the fumble that the Chiefs defense stopped them. So you've got to be able to get off the field. And you can't let Travis Kelce be the guy that kills you. It's potentially his final game at Arrowhead. They're going to want to send him off with a big game, with another trip to the Super Bowl. Don't let 87 be the guy that costs you your season when everybody in the stadium knows that that's who they're going to be looking for these big plays. Got to be able to get off the field. Got to be able to keep their stars in check. Not to say that you're going to hold Kelce, 2 catches for 16 yards or something like that. But again, when it comes to the crucial downs, don't let him be the one that seals your fate. We know what the offense is going to do. We know they're going to be able to protect the ball. We know that Josh Allen is more than likely going to have a good game. But everybody else around him needs to pick up the slack, needs to hold up their end of the bargain. Because in these games, over the last handful of seasons when they've been in this moment, that hasn't been the case. And look, they're going to need guys to step up offensively too. Because I won't be surprised if they have Trent McDuffie just shadow Khalil Shakir and dare the Bills to have somebody else beat them. And if that is the case, this is where you got to have, a big Amari Cooper catch, a big Dalton Kincaid catch, a big Keon Coleman catch. Now you got to have all these guys. This everybody eats thing is great, but if you try to give them a plate of food and they don't take it, then that's where it becomes a problem. So if everybody's truly going to eat, then they better come hungry. Because I promise you, at least one of those guys is going to have to make a play. It can't all fall on the back of Khalil Shakir and then James Cook in the run game and Josh Allen. Some these receivers are going to have to step up. Dalton Kincaid, like, he's been fine. He's not lived up to being a first-round pick. He needs to have, the Dalton Kincaid legacy game on Sunday. Keon Coleman needs to have a splash play. Amari Cooper needs to have a splash play. All of these guys where, the everybody eats mentality, well, then come hungry because you're going to need to get fed. And again, in terms of who I think is going to win, my heart says Buffalo, but until they show me that they can do it, I can't pick them to do it. I hope they do. I've been in this moment plenty of times before with this exact game, and they've come up short. So I hope that they prove me wrong. I would love nothing more than for them to prove me wrong and win this game. Heart says Buffalo, head says Kansas City. Let's talk coaching news real quick, though, before we get into Washington and Philadelphia. This whole cycle, by the way, and Theo Ash pointed it out on Twitter, just felt like home run hire after home run hire. The Bears land Ben Johnson, which was heavily rumored to be kind of his preferred destination. So he stays in the division and goes to Chicago with good pieces in place. Caleb Williams, despite what anybody wants to tell you on Twitter, just because Caleb didn't throw for 40 touchdowns and lead the Bears to the playoffs, they think that he stinks. No, he had a fine rookie year. The defensive pieces that they have in Montez Sweat and Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, they got guys on that side of the ball. And then weapon-wise, I think that Ben Johnson is going to find multiple ways to utilize DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. We'll see what the future holds for Keenan Allen, and we'll see what they do at the running back position. But in terms of places that you'd want to go, not having to worry about completely revamping the roster. I mean, Chicago's a really good landing spot in Ben Johnson. We've seen what he can do with offenses in Detroit, and now with a quarterback who's more skilled than Jared Goff, we'll see how he unlocks that aspect of Caleb Williams' game and introduces it to the Bears offense. But I think it's a home run hire there. And then you go to Jacksonville. Everything that's unfolded with the Liam Coen situation over the past few days has been incredible to watch. And tip of the cap to him, man. I know a lot of people are like, oh, man, he's really handled this unprofessionally. To hell with that, man. Now, we saw a guy in Bobby Slowick who got fired by the Texans after Houston went to the playoffs in consecutive years and won a playoff game in consecutive years. But DeMeco Ryans realized, this offense isn't really, it's stagnating. We got to move on. For Liam Coen, man, if you can lock up as much money as you can, you go do it. And so he played his cards right and got himself more money and a head coaching job. And similar to Chicago, now that Trent Baalke's not in the picture, Jacksonville would have been and is a attractive destination for a lot of reasons. A lot of the same reasons that the Bears are, is because, A, you got the franchise quarterback in place. And again, anybody who looks at Trevor Lawrence is like, oh, he actually sucks. It's such a black and white, annoying media landscape that we live in. You're either the best thing that anybody's ever seen or they think you're trash, and it's so stupid how fans operate. Trevor Lawrence took a step back last year, but I think in large part due to the complete and utter just tire fire of an organization that the Jaguars were last season, where Doug Peterson was very clearly checked out and they didn't fire him until after the season was done. So everybody just had to trudge along through that. Trevor got hurt again this year. But they've got pieces there. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence being one of them, Brian Thomas Jr. being another one of them. They've got defensive issues that need fixed, and that's more than likely going to be the heavy focus this offseason. Maybe you pursue a guy like DJ Reed, who's a free agent. If you can bring in a Tier Tart on the defensive line. They're going to have holes to fill on that side of the ball. But again, when you have the franchise quarterback, that takes the hardest part out of the equation that you got to worry about. And so now Liam Coen there, a really good play designer, really good play caller. We've seen it with Tampa Bay. You know, what he did with Baker Mayfield this past year. Baker Mayfield threw for over 40 touchdowns this year and led the Buccaneers to the playoffs. And Trevor Lawrence, who is more talented than Baker Mayfield. And if you can get another receiver in there to complement Brian Thomas on the outside, then you're really cooking with something. Like, that's a team, if they play their cards right, can get back to contending for the AFC South title and maybe win a playoff game. And then, of course, the Raiders really swinging for the fences and hiring Pete Carroll, which kind of came out of nowhere. Like, over the last couple of days, we're talking about, all right, who are the Raiders going to go out and get? It was going to be one of these young offensive coordinators. This is going to be Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn goes to the Jets. We'll talk about him in a minute. And they've gone from John Gruden to Josh McDaniels to Antonio Pierce. And now you bring in a real solidified guy who's had a ton of success, still wants to coach, and automatically will change the culture there, automatically will raise their floor, and by default will automatically raise their ceiling. Now it's about getting the quarterback, whoever that may be. Maybe he brings over Geno Smith from Seattle. Maybe he brings over Russell Wilson. But finding, the quarterback for this year and then probably drafting a guy to groom behind that veteran and get him ready for what's next. That should be what's on the top of the to-do list for the Raiders. But bringing in Pete Carroll, that's a great hire. And it gets away from what they'd been doing. John Gruden, an over-the-hill coach who's still coasting off a Super Bowl that he won north of 20 years ago. Josh McDaniels, who hasn't had any sort of success without Tom Brady and is now getting his ninth offensive coordinator stint with the Patriots. Antonio Pierce, who had never been a head coach and was a little bit in over his head, but the players wanted to keep him, so Mark Davis kept him. Now look, I was advocating for them to do that because they had tried the guru thing, and the player said, no, let's keep AP and see what he can do. So I applauded Mark Davis for doing that, but now you go out, you get a Pete Carroll, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, been to 2, been to 3, actually. I think, wasn't he the head coach of the Patriots when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to Brett Favre? So a guy who is a future Hall of Famer and has succeeded at every level that he's coached at. You put him in Las Vegas, that automatically raises their stock, raises their ceiling, raises their floor. He's going to change the culture. I'm not going to say that they're going to be a playoff team in 2025, but at minimum, they're going to be much better than what they have been, and they'll at least be competitive and have a clear vision for what their future will look like. It's a great hire by the Raiders. And then Aaron Glenn of the New York Jets, guy who, played for a while in the league, played for the Jets, was their first-round pick, was a scout for them for a while, and now comes back and completes, everything full circle and is now their head coach. The staff that he's rumored to be building, apparently he's going to try to bring over Mark Brunell with him. Maybe Todd Haley's going to be part of the staff. We'll see the staff that he builds. There's always going to be that sense of, but it's the Jets with the Jets. And I think until proven otherwise, to, no fault of Aaron Glenn, it's going to, remain that way because they've got to figure out their quarterback situation. Doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back. They got a lot of holes that they're going to have to fill because DJ Reed more than likely isn't going to come back. He's probably going to have to talk with Garrett Wilson to try to convince him to want to stay. So there's a lot of work that needs done with the Jets, and I'm not going to expect them to be a playoff team in 2025. But if they can at least establish a culture of winning and a culture of similar to what Dan Campbell did in Detroit, where, they only won 4 games that first year, but something was being built beyond football. And I think that's got to be Aaron Glenn's first objective, is building a culture beyond football, building a mindset that can be built around. Because again, the Lions only won 4 games in 2020, but everybody there was saying, yeah, but something is being put together here. Like a real culture is being put together here. And I think similar to Pete Carroll, that's got to be at the top of Aaron Glenn's list, is establishing a culture where guys want to come play for you and want to come to New York and not look at it as the cesspool where careers go to die. So hopefully that works out for the Jets and they can finally get out of this long stage of not even mediocrity, just bad football that they've been in for 15 years now. But all of these hires have felt really good. Now, it looks like the Cowboys are going to hire Brian Schottenheimer. To me, that screams the Cowboys hiring Brian Schottenheimer screams you're going to be our 1-year stopgap David Culley type, and then we're going to hire Belichick in 2026. That's what it feels like to me. Where you let Mike McCarthy walk for why? Like, why would you didn't even make an effort to keep him? You blocked the Bears from talking to him while you still had him under contract, only to hire Brian Schottenheimer, who's been the OC there for the past 3 seasons. It's completely underwhelming hire. They put themselves behind the 8 ball. To me, this says, we're going to hire you. We're going to give you a head coach job. You'll be able to have that on your portfolio and whatnot. But this is a 1-year thing. And come 2026, the job will belong to Bill Belichick after he spends a year in North Carolina. That's just how I see things going down there. And then New Orleans, we'll see. Joe Brady might be a name to still watch there because, he spent time in New Orleans on that staff. He was also in LSU for a little bit, so he's got a lot of history with that franchise and that city. But, if you're a Bills fan, you're feeling great today because it looks like there's a decent chance that Joe Brady comes back next year. So that's good news for Buffalo fans on that end. But so far, the hires that have been made all feel like home runs, and they all have different objectives of what they've got to do. For Aaron Glenn and Pete Carroll, a lot of it revolves around culture. Create an environment that guys want to be in and believe that there is a long-term plan and a goal that revolves around winning, but winning soon. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, how can we take advantage of this tremendous quarterback that we have, get the best out of him, surround him with talent on both sides of the ball? For the Jaguars, we have Trevor Lawrence. Let's take advantage of that and put together the best team possible because we have the quarterback. It's just everything else that we need to fix right now. And then for the Bears, it's have stability and competency around the young quarterback Caleb Williams and help him reach new levels and unlock that talent that everybody saw in him coming out of USC, which is why he was the number 1 overall pick. And have that unique play design ability that Ben Johnson has to unlock the offense. Because the defense, for the most part of last year, the defense was pretty solid. So for the Bears and Ben Johnson, it revolves around getting the most out of Caleb Williams and not having to ask him to do everything, but utilizing the talent that you have in ways that it wasn't utilized before, which is why you fell short of expectations. So that's my thought on just the current coaching landscape and all the hires that have taken place. Let's talk about Washington and Philadelphia real quick. For Philadelphia, it's pretty easy. If you can run the ball, you're going to win. And while the Lions lost, it was because Jared Goff couldn't stop throwing interceptions and Jameson Williams threw an interception. Turnovers is what killed the Lions. You have a pick six thrown to Quan Martin. You have an interception thrown to Mike Sainristil in the end zone. You had a fumble recovered by the Commanders. You had the Jameson Williams interception thrown to Mike Sainristil. So you had 4 turnovers. Yeah, you're not going to win games like that. And so for Philadelphia, if you can protect the ball and get Saquon Barkley going, you're going to win the game because the Commanders aren't a good run defense. Now, Dan Quinn's also not an idiot. Joe Witt and Dan Quinn are going to more than likely come together and say, look, we are not going to let them run the ball. Jalen Hurts is dealing with a knee injury. Put Marshawn Lattimore and A.J. Brown and say, you are going to have to beat us by throwing the ball. We are not going to let Saquon Barkley be what kills us. And if the Commanders are able to keep Barkley in check, I mean, they're not a team that's capable of holding Saquon Barkley like 14 carries for 40 yards. That's not going to happen. Like Barkley's going to have, a few touches this game where it's just, okay, that's Saquon Barkley. But if you can keep him in check for the most part, and again, similar to Buffalo, get off the field on timely downs, then you're going to have a real shot. They won this game earlier in the year. They split the season series with Philadelphia. And a lot of people will point out, well, Kenny Pickett played a decent portion of that game. Well, Jalen Hurts is injured. And that's not going to, that's going to hurt the Eagles with Jalen Hurts not being 100%, especially if the knee is like as bad as it seems, because then that's going to take away the read option stuff. It's going to take away his ability to run, which will make them a little more one-dimensional in the run game. But if you're the Commander, the Commander's going to be able to put up points. They've done that all year. Jayden Daniels has played fantastic all year. He's coming off putting up almost a 50 burger against the Lions. I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but the Commanders are going to be able to put the ball in the end zone. And if they can counter that with the defense saying, no, we're not going to let Saquon Barkley be the person that kills us. Somebody else is going to have to do it. Then I think that they have a real shot. But if Saquon Barkley is just having what he wants, then it's going to be over relatively quickly. And so if you're Dan Quinn, if you're Joe Witt, you're saying Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, the talented defensive line that you have, stop the run, crash out on the run, and make Jalen Hurts be the person that beats you in this game. Jalen Hurts hasn't had a great year. They've had moments where him and A.J. Brown, the game against the Steelers earlier this year, the passing game was very good in that game. But for a large portion of this season, the passing game hasn't looked great with the Eagles. And they've really leaned on Saquon Barkley being the engine, the motor, the gasoline for the offense. And if you can at least slow that down and get them off the field a couple times and take advantage of that and turn it into points, then you're going to have a real shot at winning this thing. A lot of people counted out the Commanders to even be in the game against the Lions, and they won it. A lot of people were picking the Buccaneers to win at home. Commanders have done nothing but prove them wrong. They won 12 games in the regular season. They got 14 wins total on the year. Nobody was expecting that from the Commanders, so I'm not going to sit here and write them off and say they can't win this game because they can put up points with anybody in the league. And if their defense can just get timely stops and not let Saquon Barkley absolutely gash them, they're going to be in this thing. So America's Super Bowl would be Buffalo against Washington. And that's what I want. I'm sure that's what a lot of people want. And like I said, my head says it's going to be, just the most boring, chalkiest Super Bowl ever with Chiefs, Eagles. My heart says Bills, Commanders. I will say this. I don't think that both Buffalo and Philly will win. I'm sorry. I don't think both Kansas City and Philadelphia will win. I think one of them will lose. And if we're really lucky, they'll both lose. And we'll get a really fun Super Bowl with Buffalo and Washington, a repeat of the 1991 Super Bowl where Washington won with, I believe it was Mark Rippon. That was the quarterback in that one. You got to remember, they won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. I think Theismann won the first one where they beat who did they beat? It wasn't the Raiders because the Raiders beat them. Who did Theismann? Oh, whatever. I'll go back and look because I can't remember who the Theismann team beat, and that's going to really bother me. But Doug Williams beat the Broncos. Like I said, for the life of me, I can't remember who Theismann beat. But regardless, that would be a fun Super Bowl. And that's what I'm certainly hoping for, is Bills and Commanders to be the final game that we see this year. It'll be a fireworks game. That would be a fun Super Bowl. So here's to hoping that that's what we get. If you are not already subscribed on YouTube, please be sure to do that. If you're listening to this as a podcast, be sure to leave a review and all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you after championship weekend. We'll be back to talk about all of this on the Pump Fake. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a good one.